Guys, my name is Umer Nalir, and I'm about to go on the online prosperity show. I'm the founder of ProActiveChain, and today we're going to talk about how 7 to 8 e-commerce e-commerce businesses can, improve their supply chain in terms of cost reductions, optimizing, and overall reducing your headaches running a business, basically.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And I gotta say, if you've been wrestling with e-commerce headaches, stockouts, shipping costs, or maybe shipping costs are spiraling, or whatever mandates are being brought down by whatever government you're listening to these days, or maybe suppliers that are not delivering or forecasts that are failing, I think this is going to be the episode for you. We are going to be digging into the exact problems that are keeping fast-growing brands awake at night, and we'll be bringing you exclusive content on how somebody who's going to be our guest on the show is solving these problems in real life. Now, Omar, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for the introduction, Prosper. Yes, that's exactly what I do. Basically, like you said, it's basically getting rid of headaches for a lot of e-commerce brands out there to actually not worry about stockouts, which is the biggest problem, other than marketing, I would say, for people to run their e-commerce business.
Great stuff. You know what's really exciting about this is because so much is happening, especially in the e-commerce fronts, the tariffs, everything else that people are worried about. But I'm glad that you've actually built something really big, which 6 to 7 figure e-commerce businesses can actually use. So for those that are tuning in, Umer is the founder of ProActiveChain Pvt Ltd, a specialist that helps 7 to 8 figure e-commerce brands to reduce costs, prevent stockouts, and scale without the stress. He also runs Ship.DPP China, which is a freight arm that is also offering reliable shipping from China. And what's so exciting about this is he didn't just wake up in this sort of realm. We're going to hear about his journey and what it is that he has been doing and how the pandemic actually created a nice pivot for him, which is now the platform he is standing on. Now, Umer, I could go on, and we all know that time is money, and e-commerce delivers in 5 business days, but we don't have, that much time to go on and talk about these things. Tell us, what was life like before ProActiveChain?
Well, life was, after high school, I've always been in the line of supply chain management, Prosper. For some reason, it kind of stuck in me when I was working in a factory complex back in Sri Lanka, where I'm originally from. Basically, I actually worked in a factory complex where they were creating agro products, and also like furniture and stuff like that. So working in a factory environment, I went through all of these departments, like production, QC, quality control, and also things like HR as well, and also management. But the most important and the most attractive department, I would say, would be the commercial department, which was technical supply chain department, where they were working with foreign suppliers, getting quality materials into the factory to make the finished goods. The thing that I liked about it was the negotiations that happened within that, plus also how we get quality products so that the final product is also in good quality. That's what stuck with me initially. And then I was like, okay, what's this thing called supply chain management? Because even around the world, even in Sri Lanka, it's not something that everyone hears a lot about. Obviously, logistics is there, but then it's not a very glorified thing, or not glorified, but then let's say a mainstream industry like marketing and stuff like that. So basically, I went down this rabbit hole of supply chain management, got to know that it's about not only logistics, but also inventory management, supply management, shipping management, all of those things. So that's where I was like, okay, let's make a career out of this. Let me just go down this path and see if I can build my career around this. And that's where I joined my second company, which was into a telco company. I joined as a procurement executive into purchasing services, which is different from purchasing products, which is a new aspect for me as well. And I did that. And then while I was doing that for 3 years, I thought, okay, hey, this is something that I like doing. And that's where I looked at, okay, what do I do from here? Do I just continue working, or do I need to study more about supply chain management? Because I had a basic degree in management, but I wanted something that was more focused on supply chain management. That's where I basically looked at going overseas, getting a bit of international exposure. And I moved to Melbourne to do my master's in supply chain management. That was back in 2014. And then I joined Monash and then basically did my studies there. And mind you, while I was doing my studies in supply chain management, master's in supply chain management, I didn't stop there. As a person, an international student, I also started working because obviously we have working rights for about a part-time working rights. So I made use of that part-time working rights as well. Although my education was fully funded, I also, looked at working as well. That's where I joined a restaurant. It was a chain of restaurants. I joined them and I was basically managing the inventory in terms of the food supplies, the packaging supplies, and all of that. So they had like 5 restaurants in Brighton. It's a nice. If you know about Melbourne, obviously Brighton is the beachy side of Melbourne, where you get all the really big restaurants over there as well. So I worked in 5 of those restaurants. It was all set up in the same location, which was good for me. And I was basically looking at ordering their daily food supplies. So you get meat, which is a different type of supply chain, obviously, because the shelf life for meat is less. And then also you look at the packaging supplies, which didn't have a shelf life, which had a lot more. You can order more and you can stock up. And also different products like wines and stuff like that for drinks, for even up to bread and stuff like that. So there was a bakery as well where I managed their daily bakery needs. They get their croissants and whatnot on a daily at 5 a.m. in the morning, ready to be sold in the morning for people who like to have their breakfast at the cafe. And yeah, so it was interesting. So soon after that, basically doing my master's in supply chain management, I worked at the delicacy and the restaurant and the Japanese restaurant, which they had for about 2 years. And then I thought of, okay, now I've got my degree. I want to move into something bigger. That's where I moved into a fulfillment company in Melbourne, in Truganina, in the west side of Melbourne, I would say. And then I worked in the fulfillment company, understanding the fulfillment side of the supply chain. We know about the purchasing side now. We knew about the inventory management side. Now I'm looking at the fulfillment side. When customers place their orders, how does it move from a warehouse to the end customer? How does that product flow happen? So I worked in that fulfillment company for 1.5 years, and I was enjoying it. I was working on forklifts. I got my forklift license. I was working on forklifts. I was working on tuggers. I was working on chilled spaces. Obviously, during winter, it was worse because of, the winter, plus the cold rooms are obviously very cold. So a lot of things like that was happening. And then basically I got another opportunity after that to work at the Royal Children's Hospital during the height of the pandemic. Now, as you know, during the pandemic, 2020, what happened was, yeah, it was a crazy time for all of us. And everything that we learned about supply chain management like was thrown out of the door. We were told in universities, and all the theories that we learned obviously was about having the right stock at the right time and not over ordering or understocking. But during the pandemic and working in a hospital like the Royal Children's Hospital, where it was very critical to have the protective wear, the PPE equipment ready to be used. And during that time, as you know, a lot of people were buying masks, they were buying gloves, they were buying all this protective wear just to stay protected from the pandemic. And hospitals were running short of these items because the production was less all around the world. And the hospitals were getting less and less supply because even the average human was also just buying face masks. So that was a very big challenge for me. And that's where we were like, okay, we need to have maximum stock levels. Wherever we can find spaces, we were like finding spaces within the hospital. We were closing up boardrooms. We were closing up auditoriums just to stock up protective wear like face masks, gloves, protective eyewear, gowns, and all of that. So it was a very challenging period, but it was very interesting in terms of going away from what we were studied and being practical in that scenario where, pandemics happen. It's a natural pandemic that happened, which is outside the norm of what we normally do. Like it's something that's not expected, but things like these happen within supply chain. So that kind of experience was a big eye opener for me as well to learn and, grow as a supply chain manager to be prepared for things like this. So what happened was after that was I was working from home because obviously people in Melbourne would know that obviously Melbourne was Australia was one of the most strictest countries to actually adhere to the pandemic lockdowns. I think if the statistics was right, we were like in lockdown for more than 250 days per year. And what happened was life got a little bit boring because I was surrounded by four walls. And once my work was done, I had nothing else to do. It was just about just watching Netflix and whatnot. But the interesting thing what happened during that time is, and the most critical thing that happened to me was, I had one of my friends called Marlon call me up, and we were just catching up and talking about the pandemic and how things were back in Sri Lanka and how things are in Melbourne. And I was talking about how boring life was, because we're stuck cornered around four walls. We had nothing else to do. And then he was like, there is this platform called Upwork. Why don't you, provide your services there because it's for freelancers, get into freelancing so that you have things to do and you can earn a little bit of extra money while you do it. And yeah, I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And I started my Upwork profile. And that's where I think even the e-commerce space also had a huge boom because a lot of people were starting to order stuff online because they couldn't go out and order. And there was an e-commerce boom that happened during 2020 during the pandemic. And a lot of people were like running out of stock because the demand was high and the supply was low. And that was like one of the, I would say, turning points for me where people wanted my services. Okay. So that's where I came in and I helped one brand in Australia manage their inventory at the right way. They had no processes at all. They were just ordering based on, let's say, the past orders. But then I came in and I started looking at the sales history, analyzing the sales data, predicting what we will do the right way for the next couple of months. Obviously, predictions can go plus or minus, but I had a very good idea. I reduced the accuracy of predicting stocks. And then we manage their cash flow in how much they can tie up into their stock. And then obviously I was doing a really good job for them. And then once we were doing a really good job, I got really good reviews from them, and my Upwork profile started, growing from there. I got my second client there, my third client, my fourth client, my fifth client, and it just
Absolutely.
kept growing. Um, so it was a surreal experience. Like, okay, this could actually turn into a really good freelance gig initially.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
then I was like, okay, I was getting a little bit homesick. And so I was like, okay, let me move out of the traditional 9 to 5 job. Let me do this as a full time and see for 2, 3 months whether this can actually be a really good model. And then that's what I did. I moved out of the Royal Children's Hospital, and then started doing Upwork freelancing for like for like 3 months, and then it was quite established because I had like 4 clients that were like recurring. And then what I did was I moved back to Sri Lanka just to come and meet family again. And I had a few personal reasons that I wanted to move back to Sri Lanka as well. So I moved back to Sri Lanka, and then started doing Upwork, because Upwork, obviously, you can work from anywhere else. And, uh, so
Yeah, I
that's where
can
I moved
see
back to Sri
I
Lanka.
can see your background. You're actually on holiday right now. So
Yeah, it gives you the Sri
absolutely.
Lankan vibe as well, I guess.
Absolutely. Now let's just break down that a little bit. And thank you so much for taking us through all of that, because that's quite an interesting journey. And I was, hanging on to every word. And you said, the thing that really interested you in the supply sort of chain or logistics things that you started doing was negotiations. I actually thought you were just in there for driving the forklifts, because that's what I would enjoy. Just taking it for a spin and things of that nature, right? So, did you have any sort of influence or any role models that you looked up to, especially in the school days? Because just landing yourself in positions like this, you would have seen someone, or it would have been some sort of a fascination based on somebody around you that was doing this kind of role.
To be honest, like I didn't have a exact role model, but I looked up. I had people that I like to like. I had good impressions on people who were in supply chain.
Mm.
When I was in Sri Lanka, I had a manager who was actually managing me, and I liked the way he worked. So I kind of tried to build my career around how he managed people. So I
Mm.
think some of that dropped off of me, and even when I'm running ProActiveChain right now, I think that kind of rubbed off on me, and I kind of run my business or my leadership style according to what he did those days. So kudos to him. So I think I learned something from him, which is great, and it's working for me. But in terms of a role model, I would say, yeah, he kind of rubbed off on me. But yeah, shout out to Samudu if he's watching this. But yeah, Samudu, that's about you. But yeah, yeah, it's just that I think I had a really big passion about supply chain management. That's what brought me so much from where I was to here right now. It's just that I like supply chain management. That's the passion that's driving me. Even every day I wake up to come to Proactive Chain is because of that passion, I would say. I
Absolutely.
just love it.
I would probably understand why, because I once heard that if the richest people in the world were to give all their money to everyone in the world, all right, if you wait 3 or 4 months, all that money will be back to them again. It's because they've got a really good supply chain, right?
Yes, correct.
Absolutely. Now, when you were obviously on your way up, you landed in Melbourne, and that was pretty much around 2014. I think around about then, Melbourne
Yep.
was considered one of the most livable cities in the world and things of that nature. What was your impression of Melbourne, and was there any sort of culture shock that you experienced when you arrived?
I loved it. I kind of indulged into the culture, coffee culture, I would say, in Melbourne. I'm a big tea person back in Sri Lanka. And I adopted the coffee culture in Melbourne, basically. And everyone in Melbourne would notice how big the coffee culture is. I couldn't start my day without my morning coffee. I will drive into a drive-through, grab my coffee, and just have it during the day and even in the evenings. We used to get one of these coffee trucks that comes to work, and just pay $5, which is quite expensive for a coffee, to be honest. But still, I would pay that $5 and just grab my coffee and just have it.
Umar, you're the last person that should be talking about expensive coffee because you know some of the beans come from Africa, some of them come from Jamaica. So there is a supply chain that actually makes that possible. So if it is not expensive, you won't get paid.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. But still, it hits the purse.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, while you were obviously working in all these spaces, it gave you a really wide spectrum of products that you could work with. I mean, you spoke about restaurants, you know, working with perishables, working with things with a long shelf life, and also hospitals. And you actually worked at one of the hardest times for supply chain. You know, there's that whole time when ships couldn't even move, and so no products were moving in and out. What would you say that your background in working in all these diverse industries actually prepared you to now work in this fast moving commercial aspect, especially with, high stakes of e-commerce?
Yeah, so I think it's a challenge that drive me to do it. Because end of the day, like all of these issues that come up, is something that a lot of these founders used to handle by themselves when they were running their brands. And to be honest, you do find people out there who can actually sit and just follow what to do, because supply chain is like the word says, it's a chain. It's a matter of being very coordinated and making sure that your products flow through a system and it comes to the end customer. But someone who understands supply chain, who studies supply chain, can also take it to the another level, where understanding, like you said, the shipping delays, why does this shipping delays happen? How can, like, natural disasters, obviously shipping delays, even sometimes there are times where even when a ship's coming from point A, let's say from China to the US, it can be raided by pirates. Sometimes there might be instances where the ship has to get rid of some of the cargo because something caught on fire. To save the majority of the cargo, they might have to push out some of the cargo and throw it to the sea. So things like that happen. And someone with the expertise of supply chain management would know how to handle it better because we've learned it. And since we've worked with a lot of e-commerce brands over the past couple of years, like for the past 5 years, we understand, we've gone through these scenarios, and by mistakes or by learning from this, we've basically understood how to prevent them for the next client that comes on board. So there are things that happens, even it's out of our control, but it's a matter of learning from them and going for the next, and learning from them and moving on, and making sure that those don't happen again, putting in processes around them.
Absolutely. Now, the one thing that fascinates me about your transition is you left a perfectly good job in the hospital. You know, like pretty much after the pandemic, all you just had to start doing was maybe, like you say, it's a chain, follow a checklist to make sure everything is supplied and everything is in there. And, you're working with a company that has unlimited budgets and they obviously want to make sure everything is available. Now, when you first considered leaving this stable senior role and going into entrepreneurship, did you have any fears that, oh, maybe this is not going to work, or maybe this is just an offshoot of the pandemic, and what is going to happen after the pandemic when everything goes back into normal and the Suez Canal is open and everybody is, can ship even on their own now?
Yeah. So what I would say is through the pandemic, I did realize how important e-commerce is. I felt like the more I got into e-commerce, I understood like where e-commerce is headed. The numbers didn't lie. It felt like e-commerce is here to stay and it's going to keep growing even to the future. And I see it as I see it as the future of business as well. So I felt like rather than running in a traditional supply chain, I need to move into an e-commerce supply chain where obviously there will be more demand into e-commerce and there will be more work to be done in the e-commerce space for supply chain managers. That's where I saw the challenge when I was working at the Royal Children's Hospital and when I started freelancing as well. See, I miss Melbourne. I love the footy. I know there'll be haters out there, but I loved Collingwood. I still watch my footy
Oh,
up to the
this
day.
we just have to finish this episode right now. I think that's
So, okay, you're not a Collingwood fan. So, okay. Okay. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, getting back to it is basically I miss Melbourne. I lived there, I love the quality of life there. I loved how things were. I have a lot of friends back in Melbourne. But I moved back to Sri Lanka for two things. One was family, and the other thing was to grow Proactive Chain. I once I started growing Proactive Chain, once I started Proactive Chain as an e-commerce supply chain company that helps 7 to 8 figure businesses in e-commerce. That's where I actually thought, okay, so Sri Lanka has a lot of good talent in terms of supply chain management. So if I can build a team here, which was cost effective for me, I can really provide a really good service for a lot of e-commerce businesses out there from Sri Lanka. Now, that was the idea for me. And once I moved back to Sri Lanka, once the business started growing, it made me a no-brainer to stay back in Sri Lanka, stay with family, and also grow the business the right way. So yeah, I do miss Melbourne still. I wish I can come back. I will come back to Melbourne, visit my friends and family over there as well. But yeah, for sure. I mean, I miss Melbourne, but yeah, Sri Lanka is the place for me right now. And maybe if I do expand, I obviously grow even more. Maybe I'll open up a branch in Melbourne, have maybe move between Sri Lanka and Melbourne one day,
oh,
hopefully.
absolutely. Don't worry, the weather is still the same. You know, sometimes hot, sometimes
Unpredictable.
cold. So pretty much this. Besides that, I don't think there's that, yeah, that aspect. I don't think you'll be missing. All right. Now, obviously, building a business is something totally different. You had been brought up in a scenario where you are receiving a paycheck at the end of the month, and now you have to be giving the paycheck to the team. So, having to build everything, team system, that is huge. How did you manage that transition?
It was a learning experience. I think a lot of founders out there will also agree with me. Like you do get mentors who would tell you how to do things, but then you really need to get into the nitty gritty of things, and you need to go through those hard times. If not, you're not going to learn from it. Mentors can show you the way, but you really need to get into it. That's what I would tell anyone who's getting into being a founder in a business as well. Like you need to get into you need to roll up your sleeves and get it done. There were tough days where you're like, okay, will this client who's with me will leave, and then how do I pay the paychecks for the employees that I have? But I mean, we've worked through it. We've balanced it out. I've figured out how to keep clients happy, how I would improve the client retention so that I don't have to worry about the next retainer that I'm getting, how the cash inflow is going to come, how the revenue is coming, how the revenue is going to come into the business, and also about how I would pay my paychecks. Understanding margins, how to manage margins, how to recruit people, how to see what your overall costs are and overall revenue is, and then decide based on that, okay, if I get X amount of clients, how much of cost I'm willing to pay for that amount of clients that are coming in. So It's hard to tell people how to do it. That's what I always say, but you can guide them, but you really need to start somewhere to really go through those phases and pass through those phases the hard way to actually build a sustainable business. And
Mm.
all of these businesses like who have been there for 5, 6 years would tell you the same. And you just need to do it. You got to start somewhere and just keep grinding, and you will find the rewards at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And I like that you already established that it is a chain and there's a chain of events. Some people try to arrive before they've even established,
Exactly.
some of the things. But are there some things that you'd have learned that weren't really obvious from the outside? I mean, when you started as a freelancer while you were still, in the employ of somebody else. But once you jumped on there and now everything had to be ProActiveChain, not Royal Melbourne Children's Hospital
Yeah.
or things like that. When you were literally signing the checks and giving the orders and things of that nature, what were some of the lessons that came in, or the habits, or maybe mindsets that actually kept you going?
Yeah, I think the mindset is very important, where you actually need to see where your end goal is going to be. Because at the end of the day, you need to focus on your end game, because there are times where it's going to get tough. And you need to think about, no, I'm in for the end game. I mean, I'm looking at my goal, where I'm going to be in 5 years. You need to make a step by step. For me, how it worked was basically I have like a 5 year goal as to where ProActiveChain needs to be. For me, it's like in 5 years, when I first started ProActiveChain, I was like, in 5 years, I'm going to have 50 clients on a retainer basis. I've got like, 30 employees under me getting things done. It's going to be structured like this. And I'm always on a daily basis, I'm working towards that. I'm not distracted by all the new shiny things that come up. Like there are things like, people asking me like, Umar, why don't you start your own e-commerce business? So I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes sense for me to do it because I understand the operation side of things, but then I'm focused on my business and I want to make sure that I hit my goal. But I feel like if you set your standards towards that, not even in 5 years, you might reach there in 3 years. So the mindset is very important to get there. And yeah, I mean, for me, it's like you need to start somewhere and draw up a clear path as to where you want to be and set it as stages and then go through those stages. This is where I'll be in six months. This is what I want to do in 6 months. Create SOPs, build your business in a way that it can be scalable.
I know. And you being in the supply chain, you understand, hey, everything that is nice comes to those that wait. And
Yes.
especially in the supply chain world, it's 4 to 5 business days, so and that's not normal days.
Yeah.
If it's over a weekend, that doesn't count. So just maybe having an understanding, walk us through a little bit of your methodology. Say I'm a 7-figure e-commerce brand and I'm struggling with overstock, and maybe I'm not being able to focus my cash flow or stock correctly, or there's all these high shipping costs and whatever tariffs that the other guy with the yellow hair decides to throw out on a daily basis. What are the exact steps that you would take me through? And just maybe from like diagnostics to the actual fixing.
Yeah, so the main three things that I say for a lot of e-commerce founders is that the three things that we do is, one is we optimize your supply chain. So we look at your supply chain right now and see, okay, what are the things that we can improve in your supply chain? And the other thing is how much of money we can save if we come on board with you. Like obviously there are so much of cost avoidances that we can do because we've been in this space so much. We can talk about negotiating better prices with your suppliers. If you're doing, for example, 10,000 units per month, for example, and you're paying around $5 per unit, if we can even reduce 10 cents to about $4.90, you're saving $1,000 over there. because the overall cost will be reduced by 10 cents into 10,000 units is $1,000. So even those small things we can do for you, that comes with experience. And how do you do it? How you speak to the supplier, how you negotiate with the supplier is very important. And you need someone who's experienced in doing that. And the third thing that I talk about is one of the very most important things. It might be actually number one, but I'll talk about it in number three, is because we will save a lot of headaches for you. And we will free up your mind in terms of not worrying about your supply chain. So if you take ProActiveChain on board into your business, if you have a 7-figure business, e-commerce business, if you take ProActiveChain on board, we don't come in as another employee, we come in as a partner. We make sure that you don't run out of stock and you never have to think about your supply chain ever again. And you can just focus on growing your business. So those are three things that I talk about when I try to onboard a client. And also about how we audit your current processes. We go through your current process, we work with your current process, and then talk about how we improve your supply chain day by day. We don't want to come in and say like, hey, Prosper, you got a 7-figure business. The way you're doing your supply chain is not right. We don't do that. We don't come in and say, hey, do this. This is what you need to do. This is the right way to do it. We don't do that. What we do is we do a step-by-step approach. We come in and we look at, okay, hey, Prosper, you got a current supply chain process. Okay, fine. Let's go with it. And then we'll start suggesting on a weekly basis or monthly basis. We'll be like, hey, Prosper, this is how you've been doing this particular, let's say this is how you've been negotiating with your supplier. Why don't we try this? And we'll try it out with you. And if it works, we implement it. This is how you've been shipping all this time. You've been saying all by air freight, because obviously you're running out of stock every time. You want to send your stock as fast as possible to the US. Let's talk about, stocking up in US and sending it by sea freight, because sea freight is 3 times cheaper than air freight. So things like that. That's how we plug in, and we go through a step-by-step approach so that you don't get overwhelmed with, big sudden changes and your whole business collapses.
Absolutely. And there obviously will be some misconceptions that people get wrong, especially in the e-commerce side of things, where maybe somebody has been building by themselves. They might start thinking, why would I need a supply chain consultant? Or something that founders usually misunderstand that really start causing these unnecessary problems. Maybe could be this forecasting that we're talking about, maybe costs, or maybe the actual shipping. What are some of the misconceptions that these people have?
Yeah, a lot of founders out there, especially 6-figure founders, they think they can run it by themselves, but they don't understand that if they give it to a supply chain partner like us or e-commerce supply chain partner like us, is that they save a lot more money and a lot more time. For example, for e-commerce founder, their time is limited as well, because obviously they have 24 hours per day and they have a value for their time as well. But getting someone like us actually it's more cost effective, because you get someone who's done it before, who will actually improve your supply chain and save you much more money in terms of not running out of stock. Because I've seen a lot of founders out there who are running it by themselves, and you see like during Q4 where it's actually the most sales happened for almost every e-commerce businesses during the Q4. They basically run out of stock for 2-3 days. They run out of stock for 2-3 weeks. And there's a lot of missed sales, which is a huge killer. You're running ads, you're spending on ads, you're spending on your employees, all of that. And if you don't have products to sell, you're missing sales, which is directly hitting into like lost sales. So if you have someone like us, you don't have to worry about us. You don't have to worry about your sales. You don't have to worry about your stock as well. We make sure that you never run out of stock and you have the right stock to do those sales and make those money, your revenue, which is your main income, running smoothly or, predictable. So so a lot of misconception is that a lot of founders think they can do the supply chain by themselves. And also another one is that they can find a virtual assistant to do it. Like virtual assistants are good to just run the supply chain, which a lot of these e-commerce businesses come to us with. Okay, they had a person who was running their supply chain, who was a virtual assistant. They just basically see how much we need to do for the next couple of months based on simple algorithms. And then they would just follow up with the supplier, just following up, just shipping, getting whatever freight forward that they want, shipping from point A to point B for the first freight forward that they find. And then also fulfillment management, just looking if the orders are going to the end customer. They are good at that, but having an e-commerce supply chain partner, you would see how much of money and how much of cost optimizations, how many process optimizations we can do in terms of improving your whole supply chain. We can negotiate better with suppliers. We can get 10 to 15 freight forwarders to quote for your shipment and get the best price possible for your shipment. And also look at fulfillment, making sure that not only that the products go to your customers, gets delivered to your customer, but are they getting shipped on time? So if you promise to your customers that it will be delivered within 5 days, basically we make sure that it gets delivered within 5 days, and we hold the fulfillment companies accountable. We monitor those things. So a lot of things which one freelancer can't do or one VA can't do, we have a team that looks through this whole thing and actually improves the supply chain and saves you much more money than doing it by yourself or running with a freelancer, basically.
Absolutely. There's nothing like going into, an e-commerce shop and all you see is out of stock, out of stock, out of stock. What that just does,
wasting money over there. Yeah.
It takes away your credibility and the people are not going to come back ever again. But also we've been talking a lot about your customers and things of that nature. But as your business grows, how do you make sure you're not compromising on quality and also the attention that you have on client success, because what you're doing is in different time zones, is in different locations and things of that nature. How are you also looking after your own well-being and just avoiding burnout? Because this just seems like it's burnout waiting to happen. I mean, you've just told me you fight pirates on the sea as well. And I'm just thinking, what else do you do?
Yeah. Cool. So the important thing about growing the business and not burning out has been about structuring the business the right way. And also, end of the day, we as ProActiveChain, I wanted to be not an agency, but a company that provides a freelance approach where it's very personal for each and every client. So how we do that is basically we have dedicated account managers who are only working with a set amount of clients so that the quality of managing these clients won't reduce. For example, let's say we have account managers who are only managing 2 to 3 accounts at any given time, not 10 accounts where the quality of managing these accounts will reduce. We are spending a lot on account managers who are really good at giving a quality service to only 2 to 3 clients at any given time, so that the quality doesn't drop. If you feel like, okay, the quality is dropping for a client, then we will reduce a client and put it into another account manager and try to manage the quality. Quality is important for us. And even the people who are doing the work, like there's a structure for demand forecasting, the operation side of things as well, where we have a team members. We make sure that they are not overwhelmed with work so that they provide a really good quality service for each and every client that we onboard. And one of the main things that we also talk about in ProActiveChain is not just doing the work that we are doing right now, but also thinking outside the box. How do we do things better? So which is important for a lot of these e-commerce businesses as well. As the business grows, as e-commerce grows, new things are coming up. We need to be ahead of the game. AI forecasting is something in the future that we are looking at as well right now. So we are testing AI models. We are looking at machine learning models in terms of building them into our forecasting systems. So those kind of things as well. And in terms of burnout, I mean, you need to understand once we structure the business correctly, we need to follow that particular structure where we make sure that people don't burn out. The clients don't burn out with us. The account managers don't get burnt out. The employees don't get burnt out. I don't get burnt out, so that we can really, really provide a really quality service for the whole ecosystem of e-commerce supply chain, basically. So I think having a really good structure, improving the structure to make sure that it caters to that end quality that we want to provide to the client is very important.
Absolutely. Now, for any 7 to 8 figure business that is watching right now and thinks I might as well just reach out to this Proactive guys or find out what Ship DPP China can do for me, what would be the best way that people can get a hold of you there, Umer?
Yeah, you can contact me through Umer@ProActiveChain.co. Maybe we'll put it down here. But then, yeah, you can directly call through me that. And then, yeah, we can take you through the onboarding process. And yeah, for sure. You can contact me on my email, and we are more than happy to directly work with you and get things sorted out for your e-commerce supply chain, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Umer, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your wins, and all the difficult things that you're tackling, and just a lot of the invisible lessons that a lot more people in your space actually miss. And I believe a lot of people that are listening to this right now have seen a bit of themselves in parts of your story and how you are tackling the supply chain stuff. But you did allude a little bit to the use of AI and things of that nature, but I wanted to just find out what is next for Proactive and Shipping DPV.
So for Proactive right now, it's about growing right now. We have really good processes. Everything is working very well for us. We've done really good work for a lot of clients out there. We are expanding our business. We are looking at maybe getting more, moving our businesses to more closer towards the clients. Obviously, start exploring US a little bit more. Right now, we are looking at the European Union, UK, and Australia right now. We have a few clients in the US, but we want someone to start also expanding in the US market as well, because obviously e-commerce is big in US, and we want to start catering for that. So we want to have a US team handling that. So we're looking at that, and also AI as well, since AI is a huge topic in the world right now. We are looking at AI forecasting, AI automations within the business so that we can give a really good, faster, more accurate service for a lot of our 7 to 8 figure businesses and clients right now.
Absolutely. And Umar, I can't thank you enough for the time that you spend.
Thank you so much, Prosper, for having us. Actually, thank you for running this show. Been a big part of it. I think I've been watching all of your videos, really great videos. Thank you for having us. And yeah, thanks a lot.
Cool stuff. I appreciate you. Now, for those that are watching, if today's episode got you thinking, wow, I need to really tighten up my shipping and everything else along with that, I encourage you to check out ProActiveChain Pvt Ltd. I'll be putting all those links in the show notes below. And before we close, just make sure you actually share this episode maybe with someone who's also trying to scale an e-commerce brand and maybe feels the weight of that supply chain stress is getting on top of them. Get them to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show so they don't miss out on any future stories, especially because in our next episode, we're going to be talking about ideas that will actually help you have a happier existence. And that means more freedom, less stress, and more impact. I can't wait to see what you're going to do with this information. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.